My parents had one unbreakable rule: no strangers in our house, ever. They treated it like it was carved in stone, like it was federal law or something. No one could step foot inside unless they were blood relatives or certified professionals with insurance paperwork. Why? Because they'd been robbed once before I was born, and after that, every non-family member was a potential thief or murderer just waiting for a chance. They went all out: 9 security cameras, 3 deadbolts on every door, and a system that sent alerts to their phones if anyone dared to step on our porch. Delivery drivers? We had to meet them at the street. My parents would literally rather die than let a stranger in the house, and they wore that like a badge of honor. So, there I was, the kid who could never reciprocate anything. Friends invited me over all the time, but I could never return the favor. Eventually, they stopped asking, thinking I was ashamed of my house or secretly hated them. Group projects. Nightmare. We always had to meet at the library, even during blizzards when everyone else's parents were begging to host. My girlfriend of 6 months dumped me because she thought I was hiding something. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. My parents just threatened to change the locks if I ever brought her inside. Senior year rolled around, and my parents started leaving me alone more often. They finally trusted I wouldn't break their sacred rule after 17 years of perfect obedience. They'd go to marriage counseling every Thursday afternoon, which, honestly, they needed because their paranoia was destroying their relationship too. Those 2 hours became my only time to feel normal in my own house. My friend Leo knew about these Thursday windows and joked about coming over just to see what the forbidden house looked like inside. We both knew I'd never risk it, though. Breaking the rule meant losing everything: my college fund, my car, my phone, all of it. Last Thursday started like any other. My parents left at exactly 3 p.m. for counseling, checking all the cameras and reminding me they'd know if anyone came over. 20 minutes later, Leo showed up at my door with a bag of candy from the Korean market we'd been dying to try. I knew I should send him away, but I was so tired of being the friend who couldn't do anything normal. My parents wouldn't be back for over an hour. I let him in, telling myself it would just be for 5 minutes. We sat in the kitchen, munching on these chewy candies that were harder than we expected. I kept checking the clock, paranoid my parents would somehow know. Leo was doing impressions of our chemistry teacher, making me laugh so hard I forgot to be careful. And then, bam, one of those candies shot straight back into my throat. I couldn't breathe, couldn't cough, couldn't even make a noise. I stood up, panicking, pointing at my throat. Leo stared at me for a second, then jumped up and started doing the Heimlich maneuver he'd learned in babysitting class. It took 4 tries before the candy flew out, and I collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Breaking the rule had almost killed me, but it also saved me. Leo stayed for 30 minutes, making sure I could breathe normally, getting me water, both of us knowing my parents would lose their minds if they found out. Just as he left, I was hiding the candy bag in the outdoor trash when my phone buzzed with frantic texts from my mom. The first text just said, "Explain," in all caps, followed by a screenshot from our security app, showing Leo's face as he pushed through our front door. My heart sank. I could hear my parents' car tires squealing into the driveway. They were home, and I was about to wish the candy had killed me after all. The front door slammed open, and my mom reached me first, yanking me toward the house, while my dad blocked any escape route. Mom started firing questions at me without waiting for answers, while Dad stood behind me, arms crossed, jaw twitching. I opened my mouth to explain about the choking, but nothing came out. Mom kept shaking me, asking the same questions over and over. I finally lifted my shirt to show them the red marks on my stomach from where Leo had pressed during the Heimlich. But they weren't looking at the evidence that I'd almost died. Instead, they were fixated on the security footage, pointing at Leo's arms around me, calling it intimate and inappropriate. Dad grabbed my phone and pulled out my car keys, saying my college fund was gone. They started listing everything else they were taking away while I pressed myself against the wall, trying to become invisible. After an hour of watching the footage, they announced a whole new set of rules, starting immediately. No eating anywhere in the house except at the kitchen table, even when I was alone. Every snack had to be pre-approved with a photo sent for verification. The house that already felt like a prison somehow got even smaller. Later that night, I opened my laptop to message Leo and thank him for saving my life. But the Wi-Fi was disconnected. Dad appeared in my doorway, holding the router, saying, "Internet is a privilege you haven't earned back." I lay in bed, replaying the choking moment over and over. Leo's arms around me had been the only thing between me and dying alone in that kitchen. Part of me felt grateful to be alive, but another part wondered if things would be simpler if he hadn't been there. The next morning, Leo found me at my locker before first period. He looked pale when I told him my parents had seen everything on the cameras. He winced when I explained about losing my phone and internet access, but I finally got to say thank you for saving my life. He suggested we go to my parents together after school to explain everything, but I knew that was the worst idea ever. They'd probably try to sue him or call the cops. The warning bell rang, and we went to our separate classes, but I couldn't focus. During my free period, I found myself walking toward the counselor's office. Fiona Walsh, the new counselor, didn't know my family's reputation yet, which made her perfect. I sat down and started talking about the cameras, the rules, and what happened with Leo. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she suggested we could work on a gradual plan to help my parents see how their rules were affecting me. When I got home that afternoon, there was a white van in our driveway installing new cameras. My mom didn't even look at me when I walked in. At dinner, I tried to find middle ground by suggesting I could take a first aid course, but my dad said the solution was much simpler. Just never break the rule again. The next day, I found out my parents had emailed my chemistry teacher, saying I couldn't participate in group lab work unless he supervised every interaction. I felt my face burn as everyone stared at me. After school, I went to the library to use the computers since I didn't have internet at home anymore. I logged into my bank app and saw my college fund was still there, but required 2 signatures for any withdrawal. They had literally locked me out of my own future money. I needed to start making my own money immediately if I ever wanted to escape after graduation. I applied for a job at a coffee shop, and surprisingly, my parents said I could keep it with conditions. All my paychecks had to go into their account, but cash tips went straight into my pocket. 3 days later, I was dragging the trash bins to the curb when Warren from next door waved me over. He mentioned how my parents had freaked out over a break-in that was just a prank by some kids. I wanted to ask more questions, but my mom appeared, glaring at me for talking too long. At my next session with Fiona, I described a typical day at home. She said what my parents were doing sounded like trauma turned into something else: control. That evening, I wrote my parents a 3-page letter explaining everything. When I got home, there was a typed document titled Home Safety and Security Contract with 37 rules. I crossed out the GPS tracker line and left it unsigned. Dad found it and told me if I didn't sign, I could forget about prom or graduation parties. I signed it anyway, but kept the crossed-out parts crossed out. At lunch the next day, Leo asked if he'd made my life worse by coming over. I told him it wasn't his fault, but things had gotten harder. That weekend, I signed up for a CPR certification course. My parents couldn't argue with me learning emergency skills, and it gave me another excuse to leave the house. I was determined to find a way out of this suffocating situation, one step at a time.